A Voyage to Lilliput, Chapter 6. Although a full description of Lilliput would require an entire book, I will give the reader a general idea of this remarkable empire. The people of Lilliput are a little under 6 inches tall, and everything around them is in the same proportion. Their largest horses and cattle stand only 4 or 5 inches high, while sheep are about 1.5 inches tall. Their geese are no larger than sparrows, and many smaller creatures are almost invisible to someone of my size. Nature has adapted the Lilliputians' eyes perfectly to their world. They can see nearby objects with great precision, though they do not see far into the distance. I was often amazed to watch a cook pluck a bird, scarcely larger than a fly, or a young girl thread a needle with silk so fine that I could barely see it. Their tallest trees are about 7 feet high. In the royal park, the highest treetops only reached the height of my clenched fist. All other plants and vegetables are equally small. The Lilliputians are highly educated and have developed learning in many fields. Their writing is unusual, running diagonally across the page from one corner to the other. They bury their dead with their heads pointing downward because they believe that after 11,000 moons all people will rise again. Since they think the earth will then be turned upside down, they expect to find themselves standing upright when resurrected. Although many educated people admit the belief is absurd, the custom continues because it remains popular among ordinary citizens. The empire possesses many unusual laws and customs. Crimes against the state are punished severely, but false accusers face an even harsher fate. If an accused person proves his innocence, the accuser is put to death in disgrace, while the innocent person receives generous compensation and public recognition. The Lilliputians consider fraud a greater crime than theft. They argue that a person may protect himself from thieves through caution, but honesty has little defense against clever deception. Since trade depends on trust, they believe fraud threatens society itself and therefore deserves the severest punishment. Unlike most nations, Lilliput rewards good behavior as well as punishing wrongdoing. Anyone who can prove faithful obedience to the laws for 73 moons earns special privileges, a reward from the public treasury, and the title of lawful citizen. Their image of justice reflects this principle. She is shown with 6 eyes to symbolize vigilance, an open bag of gold in one hand, and a sheathed sword in the other, demonstrating a preference for reward over punishment. When choosing officials, the Lilliputians value moral character more than intelligence. They believe honesty, justice, self-control, and good intentions are more important than extraordinary talent. In their view, a virtuous person who makes mistakes through ignorance is far less dangerous than a brilliant but corrupt person who uses intelligence to advance wrongdoing. Likewise, anyone who denies divine providence is considered unfit for public office. Since rulers govern under the authority of providence, the Lilliputians see it as absurd to entrust power to those who reject that authority. I should note that these principles belong to their original institutions, not to the corrupt practices that later emerged. The strange custom of gaining high office by dancing on ropes and earning honors by leaping over sticks was introduced generations later and grew with political rivalries and factional disputes. Ingratitude is considered one of the worst crimes in the empire. The Lilliputians believe that a person who repays kindness with hostility is likely to be an enemy to all mankind and therefore unfit to live in society. Their ideas concerning parents and children are equally unusual. They argue that parents deserve no special credit for bringing children into the world, since this is merely a law of nature. As a result, they do not trust parents to educate their own children. Every town maintains public nurseries where children are sent at the age of 20 moons. There they are educated according to their abilities, social rank, and future responsibilities. Trained teachers prepare them for the station in life best suited to their talents and character. The education of Lilliputian children continued according to strict rules. Boys of noble families were raised by learned teachers and taught honor, justice, courage, modesty, religion, and love of country. Their food and clothing were simple, and they were kept busy with study and exercise. Parents were allowed to visit only twice a year, and even then for no more than an hour. Gifts, excessive affection, and private conversations were discouraged, as the Lilliputians believed such influences could weaken good character. Children of merchants, craftsmen, and other ordinary citizens were educated in much the same way, though their training was adapted to the occupations they would later pursue. Girls were educated similarly to boys. They were taught discipline, modesty, practical knowledge, and the skills required for domestic life. The Lilliputians believed that a wife should be an intelligent and agreeable companion, not valued only for youth or beauty. Girls of noble families remained in school until they reached marriageable age, while girls from poorer families were trained according to their expected station in life. The government required parents to contribute toward the cost of raising and educating their children. The Lilliputians believed it was unjust for people to bring children into the world and then leave society to bear the burden of supporting them. However, the elderly and sick were cared for by public hospitals, and begging was unknown throughout the empire. During my stay of 9 months and 13 days in Lilliput, I arranged my life as comfortably as circumstances allowed. Using some of the largest trees in the royal park, I made a table and chair suitable for my size. Hundreds of seamstresses and tailors were employed to make my shirts, bed linen, and clothing. Their methods of measuring me were ingenious, relying on mathematical calculations and careful observations. When my clothes were finished, they resembled patchwork only because so many pieces of tiny cloth had to be joined together. To prepare my meals, 300 cooks lived in small houses built around my residence. Each day they provided enough food for my enormous appetite. A single dish was little more than a mouthful to me, and I often consumed their geese and turkeys in a single bite. The sight amazed my servants, who watched me eat bones and all, just as we might eat a small bird. One day the emperor, the empress, and several members of the royal family honored me by dining at my table. They sat in specially prepared chairs while I entertained them with my enormous appetite. Among the guests was Flimnap, the Lord High Treasurer. Although he behaved politely, I noticed he watched me with an unfriendly expression. I later learned that Flimnap had long regarded me as a burden on the empire. He repeatedly complained to the emperor that my upkeep was draining the royal treasury, and argued that I should be dismissed at the first convenient opportunity. Though he concealed his feelings behind outward courtesy, he had become one of my secret enemies. Another source of trouble arose from a foolish rumor involving the treasurer's wife. Court gossip claimed that she had developed a strong affection for me and had visited my residence in secret. This story was entirely false. The lady had visited me several times, but always openly, and in the company of relatives and friends, as many other ladies of the court also did. Whenever visitors arrived, I would carefully lift their coach and horses onto a table, specially prepared for such occasions, and spend the afternoon conversing with them. These gatherings were entirely innocent, yet malicious tongues turned them into scandal. Although the treasurer eventually realized the accusations against his wife were unfounded, he never forgave me. The affair increased his hostility toward me and damaged my standing at court. From that time onward, I noticed my influence with the emperor steadily declining, largely because the emperor relied heavily on the advice of his favorite minister,